Okay. I actually realized I misspoke. I said let's start at the full hour. I didn't mean at the full hour, at the full half hour. So hopefully that was clear. Anyway, we mentioned later on that we meet, well, right now. Okay. So I don't know whether we should wait. Doesn't seem everyone is here yet. Well, anyway, let's start with, again, bring back to mind our initial motivation, the motivation of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, just to take a moment to remember that we're here, we're listening, reflecting, and meditating on Buddha nature, not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that we aspire to become fully enlightened, so that may this, what we learn here today, may this become a cause for us to become fully awakened, fully enlightened, for the benefit of all sentient beings. All right. Now, with this motivation, let's continue. And again, it's important, of course, to remember also in what way is that which you learned, that what we've learned so far about Buddha nature, even if it's explained by the different philosophical systems, Vaibhashika, Satantrika, Chittamatra, how this is relevant to you even right here, right now. So of course it's relevant from the point of view of Buddhahood. But as we've heard, not everything about the explanation that we received is to be dismissed. And so therefore, especially the mind-only school, of course, there's more emphasis on the mind, the importance of the mind, and the potential we hold in our mind. I mean, the potential to do so many different things, and to do one of the most difficult, I mean, to achieve one of the most difficult states, that of a Buddha. I mean, just thinking that if we have the potential to become a Buddha, well, without even considering Buddhahood, what is it we can all achieve? So there's so much we can achieve. Something I think we need to really become aware of when we compare ourselves with others, even if we don't really intellectually hold on to inherent existence, we have some sense of emptiness, but we need to check, do we have a sense this other person is so totally different from me, as in like they're so amazing and I'm not able to do the same thing, to kind of put ourselves down, to feel discouraged, to feel disheartened, and have a sense, yeah, others can do it, but I can't do it. Well, especially at times when we lack self-confidence, and that's definitely a problem we suffer from in the 21st century, a lack of self-confidence. Of course, it's understandable considering the amount of pressure we experience, and well, these ideals of people in terms of their body shape, their accomplishments, and so forth. It can be overwhelming, it can be intimidating, but really when we understand what our mind is capable of, then it's just a matter of applying the right kind of causes and conditions, and we can all achieve what other people have achieved, maybe not in the same way exactly, because we haven't started early enough in this life and so forth. But I mean, of course, to ask ourselves, is it really worthwhile? Are these things that they have achieved really bringing us lasting happiness? We should question that, because oftentimes we have a sense, oh, this will really make me happy if I become famous, if I achieve this kind of job or this kind of status, what have you. So to question, of course, is this really bringing me happiness? And am I limiting myself, believing, oh, these other people are so great, they can do it, but I can't do it? Because that is simply not true. we have actually, in terms of its nature, the actual nature of our mind, the actual, well, substance is it's a misleading word because substance suggests something physical, but really in terms of its mental substance, um, we can come to understand that our mind is actually not different from that of a Buddha. Its actual nature being clear and knowing, no difference. So in the case of the Buddha, we no longer speak of Buddha nature because, well, the potential has been actualized. Buddha nature being this kind of potential, this ability to become a Buddha, or, well, at least, yeah, explaining that. Now, Buddha doesn't have that nature, but, well, has accomplished basically that goal. But nonetheless, in terms of the Buddha's mind and our own mind, on the deepest level, there's no difference. And this we need to, especially when we realize, when we become aware of our own self-loathing or feeling discouraged, having a sense, I can't do it. Well, like I said, the sky is the limit. When it comes to Dharma practice, no matter how old we are, no matter what the circumstances are. In fact, actually, certain circumstances that offer a lot of challenges, they can be a lot more beneficial. Being around people that are challenging, that are difficult, or experiencing pain ourselves, those are the opportunities to make our Dharma practice most effective. So just that, especially at this day and age where there are more obstacles, if we practice well, we will proceed on the path much faster than someone who lived possibly at the time of the Buddha, when the conditions were very conducive, when it was relatively easy to practice the Dharma. It took longer because it was easier. In that way, reflecting on this potential as set forth by the Chittamatra school, of course, the emphasis is slightly different to the emphasis we find later when we study the Madhyamika, the Madhyamika view. Still, as I said, this is not to be dismissed. It's still true that this potential is responsible for us to attaining this higher state. So our mind has that potential due to its actual nature. So this is how we can bring it into our own life, into our daily life, and that helps us to overcome self-loathing, discouragement, and so forth. Okay, but then to return to the actual topic. Now, here in this little handout that's based on Benjen Sontarpa's explanation, well, then Benjen Sontarpa, he proceeds by explaining the three characteristics that were previously mentioned in the quote of the Abhidhamma Sutra. That's in page 11 on the handout that you also have. So there are three characteristics that are considered to be important, that this potential, whether in the form of naturally abiding or evolving Buddha nature, these seeds that we all carry in our mind, it has existed since beginning this time. Madhyamika would also assert that. It's always been there. This potential, it is obtained. So just to reiterate again, the Prasangika school does accept that potential, the seed potential, but it's seen as being merely labeled on the basis of the fact that our mind can transform into the mind of a Buddha. Based on that, we talk about this particular seed, this particular potential. So therefore, has existed. Both types of Buddha nature have existed since beginning of this time. Well, that is to say, really evolving Buddha nature. Of course, it only came later, but here, since beginning this time, means in terms of its continuum. So the continuum has always been there. So previously, it was not called evolving Buddha nature. It was called naturally abiding Buddha nature. So before, the seeds, as described in the Chittamatra school, were nourished by listening, contemplating, and meditating on the Dharma. So at that time, it was called naturally abiding Buddha nature. However, they're of the same continuum. So the same continuum of seeds, which is why even evolving Buddha nature, from the point of view of its continuum, has existed since beginning this time. And there is a obtained by Dharmata. Dharmata, in certain contexts, it means emptiness, which is a little bit confusing sometimes, the words like Dharmata, as in like Dharma, also meaning phenomenon or that which exists, refers of course to the Buddha Dharma, and then Dhammata as in like nature. It can refer to the ultimate nature. Then it can be, in the conventional context, it can be used as something existing naturally. I mean, just conventionally, it exists naturally. It doesn't need anything else to kind of put it there, posit it, if you like. So it's always been there, in other words. Sometimes we even use the word dharma, like naturally, that nothing exists by way of its own nature. However, then it would actually be a slightly different word. But anyway, in English, this is a matter where the word nature doesn't exist by way of its own nature. That's something to be negated. And then you have nature as in emptiness, or nature as naturally existent. Anyway, to not further confuse you, it's already quite confusing. But here, Dhammata, as I said, does not refer to emptiness, but to, on the conventional level, naturally existent. So therefore, we say that the two types of Buddha nature, as explained in the Chittamatra school, they existed naturally. So obtained by Dhammata is another way of saying that they were not posited by an awareness. Now, we still call them seeds as in like potentials, mental seeds as such. And usually seeds are left on the mind by other types of minds. So here it's mentioned the seed of anger, for instance. So for instance, if you take the karmic seed, so seed from the point of view of resulting in a certain karmic experience or a certain experience, then is described as a karmic seed, and that was posited by another mental consciousness. So there are certain seeds on our mind that were not always there, that we created ourselves. Okay, so really important, again, as part of the understanding of the mind, although we always had the potential, so obtained by Dhammata, we naturally have the potential to remove our obstructions to become a Buddha. But in the meantime, before we've reached that, we are responsible for all the experiences we have. Our mind plants these seeds, these leaves behind, these residues, if you like. So put it in different words, every time there's a thought of anger, for instance, it leaves something behind on our mind. And if that anger then motivates a certain action, then again, that leaves something on our mind that has the potential to create an experience in the future, which we then call a karmic result, based on what it results in. Therefore, many of our seeds were created by our own mind temporarily. They come and go and come and go. Of course, they're positive ones and negative ones. But here, those ones, as I said, they have been there all the time. And the third characteristic is it's a distinctive feature, or the distinctive feature of the 6 sense sources. Now, this explanation is subject to quite a bit of analysis, quite a bit of debate. What does it mean to be a distinctive feature of the 6 sense sources? So some people just simply say, well, it really means the 6th sense source number 6, which is the mental consciousness. And well, it's definitely a distinctive feature of that. It's one of the main features of the mental consciousness. But in that context, well, what are the 6 sense sources anyway? I mean, 6 sense sources. Sometimes we talk about the 6 forms. Here you may see a parallel. For instance, Solness talked about the foundation of mindfulness, as described here in this system, in the Sanskrit tradition, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And we have the mindfulness of the body, for instance. Probably will become clear tomorrow, but anyway, mindfulness of the body, focusing on the body. And then what does body mean? It can be the external body, the internal body, and the body that is both. And that's similar here. The 6 sense sources refers to the same thing. So the external body or the external sense sources are visual forms, sounds, odors, taste, tangible objects, and phenomena. So those are described as physical form. Well, they are physical, obviously. There's something we perceive with our sense consciousness, at least the first 5, I should say. Sorry, so sense sources. And the 6 are the objects of the mental consciousness. Now, sense sources in the scriptures, when we talk about sense consciousnesses, usually in the Western context, sense consciousness is just referred to the 5 sense consciousnesses. But sometimes the word is used in the Tibetan Buddhist context, or in the Sanskrit tradition is used such that we talk about 6 sense consciousnesses, with the 6th sense consciousness being the mental consciousness. And what is it that we need for the 6 sense consciousnesses to apprehend their objects? Well, the 12 sense sources. So the 6 external sense sources and the 6 internal sense sources. And those are described here. So the external ones, visual forms for the eye consciousness, sounds for the ear consciousness, and then all the way to the mental consciousness, well, anything that exists. Those are the external objects. They are likewise called external form. So that would be in the case of mindfulness of the body. You would talk of body consisting of like external form, for instance, and then internal form, which would be the first 6 internal sense sources. Again, sources, of course, for the senses, but here it means the sense faculties. So the eye sense source, the ear sense source, the first 5, they're also internal form and part of the 6 internal sense sources as well. So this is how oftentimes the mind is explained, the mind and objects. So objects are explained in relation to the mind. What is the source? What do I need to perceive something? The 6 types of minds, what do they mainly need? They need external objects, the external sense sources, and they need, well, each of the sense consciousnesses, they need the sense faculties. And then the last one is the mental consciousness itself. So for the mental consciousness to perceive a phenomenon, which is the external sense source, any kind of phenomenon, to perceive that, it needs a previous moment of mental consciousness. It doesn't need anything on the physical basis. Holiness briefly mentioned it this morning. The mental consciousness doesn't necessarily need to exist in relation to a body. It can exist without a body. But at least what it definitely needs is an object and the previous moment of consciousness. So all this explanation also helps us to better understand what is consciousness, experiencing entity. So we talk about consciousness, the mental consciousness being Buddha nature, well, we need to understand it better. It has an object at all times. It experiences that object. It is clear and knowing in its nature, and it's just temporarily obstructed and can eventually become the mind of a Buddha. Right. So anyway, now the question that still remains is, in what way here in the Chittamatra school is the seat, the distinctive feature of the 6 sense sources, considering all 6? And so there's a lot of different explanations. You can read through them. I don't think I need to go through all of them, like different debates. So in the context of debate, you would then go, what does it mean? The distinctive feature of the 6 consciousness, that makes sense. But of all the other one, the external, are you talking about the external sense sources or the internal one? Well, the internal probably makes more sense. Eye sense source, ear sense source, definitely phenomena sense source, which is the mental consciousness itself. So the internal one, but are you saying it's all 6? And so different explanations are given, as in like, well, if you have this Buddha nature, then your 6 sense sources are more distinguished. This is one explanation that is given in one text by Lama Tsongkhapa, for instance, who sets forth he wrote this commentary, an extensive commentary on the Chittamatra school following scriptures. Now, as you've had, it's part of understanding the Dharma thoroughly in all its details. It is very helpful to learn the different schools, to learn which aspects to take on and which aspects to dismiss. It's really, really helpful in terms of, well, deepening our understanding. And Lama Tsongkhapa helped in that process in the way that he composed commentaries on some of the different philosophical schools, even though he was a follower of the Prasangika school. So he composed this important commentary called The Difficult Points of the Mind Basis of All, or the commentary on the difficult points of the mind basis of all, a text that we studied. It's quite interesting where the Chittamatra school, like I said, there's a lot of emphasis on the mind. But when you put that much emphasis on the mind and you emphasize, like you talk about the mind, like the mind truly exists, inherently exists, then it's difficult. It's difficult to account for the mind changing all the time. And sometimes it's there in a coarse form, and sometimes it's there in a subtle form. And if everything is just imprints, well, you need to have a very stable basis to keep all these imprints on, which is why the Chittamatra school has a sub-school that says that there's like a mind basis of all. There's like a mind that holds all the imprints. So this seems pretty bizarre, but it's still, it's similar again to this idea of like a crunch of like adding a little bit to some of the explanations, adding another mind, although by the higher schools that's not asserted. But if you think along these lines, it helps to get a better understanding. It makes it work. And once your mind is more flexible to understand how imprints on the mind are left and how they are responsible for our experiences, then you can let go of the extra explanations that are given, for instance, in the Chittamatra school, and still feel comfortable with everything that is said. It doesn't seem to be contradictory. So here, for the time being, when you follow the Chittamatra school that follows scripture, well, they talk about this mind basis of all. You probably heard about it. And here, Lama Tsongkhapa in his commentary, setting forth the Chittamatra school following the mind basis of all, or following scripture. Well, according to that school, not everyone has Buddha nature. So then he says, well, for those who have Buddha nature, it's a distinctive feature of their of their six sense sources. But what does that mean, a distinctive feature? So in the debate context, you would then debate, what is this distinctive feature? Anyway, there's a bit of discussion here. What does that mean, that it distinguishes it, etc.? And I don't think we need to go into it. I remember many of our teachers, well, they would suggest maybe it's really just the sixth consciousness and not all six of them. Or, it enables the six sense sources to transform and become those of a Buddha. Although the mental consciousness is the main source, but even the Buddha has all the other sense consciousnesses. They're there, but they're not the enlightened, or they're not considered to be the enlightened mind of a Buddha, or that which makes a Buddha, or makes a Buddha enlightened. That which is responsible, or that which is the main characteristic of a Buddha, is the mental consciousness. So anyway, without going into a lot of explanation on this, we can just skip a little bit here. So to then go to page 16, I continue now the explanation that is given there, where Asanga says that he actually distinguishes between the seats. And like, just to remind you, we're talking about something that also the Prasangika school asserts, that we have these seats. So this is asserted, except they're not considered to be Buddha nature, but that the seats that we naturally have, they were always there, they're slightly subtler. They're more difficult to recognize, they're subtler, therefore, whereas the seats that were activated, the seeds in our mind that were activated, or the potential that was activated by listening contemplating and meditating on the Dharma, those are coarser, they're easier to understand. Anyway, that's just something that may be interesting to hear. And having said this, now there's a new aspect. There's something new that is explained here. So far, we've heard about Buddha nature, simple Buddha nature, naturally abiding, evolving Buddha nature, still from the point of view of the Chittamatra school. But what is also explained in that context is there's further terminology where you use terminology like Hira nature, solitude realizer nature, and Mahayana nature. Now, in the English context, those are not mentioned that much, but we still need to account for the fact that although we all have Buddha nature, some are drawn towards the Hira vehicle. So in the Pali tradition, as you know, you have practitioners called Hiras and practitioners called solitary realizers, two types of practitioners. Without going into much detail on them, Hiras, as the name suggests, they listen to the teachings, they even listen to Mahayana teachings without practicing them themselves, but passing them on to others. So in that way, they listen to the Dharma, they're very socially involved, if you like, they follow the Sangha, they're part of the Sangha. Whereas solitary realizer, again, more solitary, they live in the more solitary life. They don't kind of associate with others as much. They attain their realizations much more on their own. But despite those differences, they're all aiming to attain liberation. So where does Buddha nature come in here? Where does Buddha nature come in? Is this responsible for someone following the Hira path? Is it responsible for someone following the solitary realizer path? How does that work? And then likewise with regard to a bodhisattva, like how does someone then choose not to follow the Hira path, but instead to follow the Mahayana path? And this is explained here with regard to Hira nature. There's something called Hira nature, solitary realizer nature, and then you have the bodhisattva nature. So anyway, in addition to Buddha nature, here it says that there are three other types of nature. Hira nature, solitary realizer nature, and Mahayana nature. Now, they're different. They're not the same as Buddha nature. So if you look at what it says here, so Hira nature is the seat, again, it refers to the seat of uncontaminated exalted wisdom in the continuum of someone, a practitioner who is awakened Hira nature. So this is a way we haven't spoken of Buddha nature. Well, in a way you could say that once your naturally abiding Buddha nature has awakened, then it's become evolved Buddha nature. So to use the explanation of the Chittamatra school, well, that's how they would explain it. However, from the point of view of the Prasangika school, for instance, of course, it's slightly different. So you awaken your Buddha nature, you awaken Hira nature. So what does that mean? Hira nature here refers again to the seed in the continuum of a practitioner who has awakened Hira nature, but not yet attained the state of a Hira Arhat. So more specifically, a practitioner who has awakened Hira nature is someone who is highly determined to practice the Hira path and become a Hira Arhat. So upon receiving teachings on the Pali tradition, here I call it the Hinayana teachings, and inspiration to the example of other Hira practitioners, they experience, or Hira Arhats, this person experiences great joy and exhibits physical reactions such as his eyes filling with tears and his body hair standing on end. This is how it's described in the scripture. So in other words, it's someone who gets so inspired. So they have this seed, this seed of a Hira nature, and they experience this great they experience great joy upon hearing these teachings, etc. And so they naturally then follow the hero path. Now, actually, hero nature must be evolving nature. Hero nature is necessarily evolving nature, in that it's through listening. So the question therefore arises, how do you come to hero nature? What is it? Why is naturally abiding that potential that we all have? How does it then become a potential, this evolving Buddha nature? So the evolving Buddha nature is at the same time a hero nature. Okay, so first, if you have like 3 different types of beings, they're all who haven't awakened any of the nature, so no hero nature, no solitude realizer nature, or bodhisattva nature, none of those were awakened. They all have just naturally abiding Buddha nature, naturally abiding Buddha nature. And then through external, so let's say one of them is inspired by hero practice, they meet hero practitioners, and due to just imprints that they have accumulated over time, many causes and conditions, now those teachings awaken within them, awaken their Buddha nature, so that it's not just evolving Buddha nature, it's also hero nature. So in a way, they are moving closer towards Buddhahood. Their Buddha nature has evolved, but by way of fast following the hero path. So I hope this is clear now, that therefore hero nature, when that has been awakened, it's the same as awakening Buddha nature, but in the sense that Buddha nature very specifically is now activated, or is now become awakened in the way to follow the hero path. Or in the case of the solitude realizer path, again, you've activated the naturally abiding Buddha nature that has been activated. So it's become evolving Buddha nature, but evolving Buddha nature that at the same time is solitude realizer nature. It's this potential has been awakened, but instead of following now the Buddha, the Mahayana path, you're moving closer, of course, towards enlightenment, but by way of first following the Hinayana path, or following the solitude realizer path. And then once the person accomplishes that, then they move on further, of course, to become fully enlightened. This explanation I just gave is based on the view that everyone will become enlightened. There are some followers, as I said earlier on, there are some followers of the Chittamatra school following scripture, and even some of those following reasoning. First of all, don't accept that everyone has Buddha nature, but also accept that even if someone has these different natures, well, once they've become a hero, although they have Buddha nature, but once they followed the hero path, well, that's it. They'll just become a hero and not become enlightened. Or if once they've followed the solitude realizer path, that's it. You become an arhat, you become liberated, and you don't enter the Mahayana path. But actually, the final view, the view that is closest to the Prasangika, is, of course, everyone will become enlightened. So in the lower schools, it seems to correspond to our own sense that people can be strictly divided into those who will definitely follow this path and no other. So our own sense that people are intrinsically like this and like that, etc. But of course, from the Prasangika school point of view, that doesn't exist. Everyone has the potential to eventually become a Buddha. But in the meantime, it's possible you awaken your hero nature, you awaken your solitude realizer nature, or you awaken your Mahayana nature. And the explanation I've just given there, that is mentioned in the part that we usually study when we study about Buddha nature. It does in the Chittamatra school, so it does mention hero nature, solitude realizer nature, and Mahayana nature. But of course, and as is later on mentioned, I just don't know whether we'll have the time, you can apply this also to the Mahayana system, to the Prasangika system. In the Prasangika system, Prasangika Madhyamika, you have that same explanation. The evolving mind, the mental consciousness, that is the evolving Buddha nature. Well, it's possible. We all have the potential to become Buddhas. Yes, that's our mental consciousness. But it is possible to awaken this Hira nature. It's possible to awaken the solitary realizer nature. And those are just temporary. You follow those paths because of different imprints. Definitely here, although the imprints in the Prasangika school are not called Buddha nature, but they still play a huge part. So some people feel drawn towards the Hira path, some towards the solitary realizer path. And eventually, of course, they will all become bodhisattvas and become Buddhas. But then there's some who right from the outset, who are not interested in the Hinayana, in the Hira or the solitary realizer path, but right from the outset choose to become bodhisattvas. Will that be faster? Well, not necessarily. Who knows? I mean, personally, first of all, was I interested maybe in the Hira path in the past? I don't know. So I could have awakened the Hira path in the past, in a previous life, and not have followed the Hira path as such to become a Hira Arhat. That's a possibility. And even if I've never awakened Hira nature or solitary realizer nature, and even let's say I do awaken the Mahayana nature, and I'll say more what is needed to awaken the Mahayana nature in particular. But anyway, so even if I'd awakened it now, and then another person awakens his or her Hira nature and practices really in a dedicated way, and it's said that you need only 3 lifetimes if you're really dedicated and you work hard, you can become liberated. And then if due to the strong imprints of some practice of the Sanskrit tradition, they then very quickly generate, after their liberation, generate bodhicitta and then follow the Mahayana path, well, they relatively quickly attain Buddhahood. Whereas I'm stuck for many eons to come, having maybe awakened the Mahayana nature, but not being able to move further. So anyway, just that explanation to understand, well, from the high school point of view, definitely also many followers of the Chittamatra school following that. But of course, our main aim is to understand the Prasangika system, that, yeah, there are different ways, different goals. I mean, there's liberation, there's enlightenment. Some may become liberated first, but eventually everyone will become enlightened. Okay. Now, what I also mentioned earlier on was, what does it mean to awaken in particular the Mahayana nature? This is still something important. This is something that we may find, definitely relevant. What does it need? What does it need to awaken Hira nature? What does it need to awaken your solitary realizer nature? Well, usually, and here there's some, this is a matter of personal opinion more, like the scriptures are not that clear on it, but some of my teachers would say, well, to really feel moved towards the Hira path, that's the main kind of aspect. So it doesn't mean you have to enter the Hira path, don't have to enter the path yet, but just having that real drive, that real interest in the Hira path, that would mean someone has awakened the Hira nature. The same applies for solitary realizer. So again, feeling drawn towards it, really wanting to study, contemplate, and meditate on the different teachings associated with this part of the Buddha's teachings. But then when it comes to the Mahayana nature, so what does it mean to awaken Mahayana nature? So when you awaken your Mahayana nature, you awaken your Buddha nature, in the sense then that, there's something that has happened that is now, from then on, you can say a person has awakened Buddha nature, has awakened in particular Mahayana nature, is now moving towards the Mahayana. And what is that? What is awakened? What is that? What is that person? What is different to before? And usually what is said is that this person has generated what's called great compassion. When we generate great compassion for the first time, we have awakened the Mahayana nature. We have awakened the Mahayana nature, or if you want to be more politically correct, instead of calling it Mahayana nature, you may call it the Sanskrit tradition nature. Anyway, you're therefore now moving definitely towards the Mahayana path, the Bodhisattva path, even without having entered it. So as you're probably all aware, to enter the Mahayana path, to enter the Bodhisattva path, you need to have bodhicitta, great compassion, the development or the developing great compassion is one of the causes for the mind of enlightenment. Before we can generate bodhicitta, we need great compassion. What is that great compassion? Well, it is a mind that focuses on all sentient beings and wishes them to be free from suffering. And not just that, be free from, well, not just the suffering of suffering, but from anything that limits them, anything that limits them in the sense, anything that obstructs them, at least from being liberated, to wish them to be free from any obscuration that prevents them from attaining the state of liberation. That at the very least, you wish for all sentient beings to be free from. And to make it in particular great compassion, so it's not just the wish that they be free, but that I may be able to protect them. The wish, the aspiration, may I be able to protect them from these different types of obstructions, from these types of sufferings that obstruct them, prevent them from becoming liberated. If you have that wish, great compassion, then with this great compassion, you have awakened your Mahayana nature. You have awakened Mahayana nature. So that is you've become someone who now who's endowed with, who holds the Mahayana nature. This is most relevant because, of course, the tradition we follow here, this becomes very important. And the question, of course, is why is it great compassion? I've already mentioned this in different contexts, in different courses. Why is it great compassion? What is it about great compassion that when we generate the wish, the sincere wish, not just for all sentient beings to be free from whatever prevents them from becoming liberated, so being free from the three types of suffering, not just that, but may I be able to do it? Well, the different explanations on it, but maybe I can put it out there. Maybe some of you remember the answer, something you can reflect on. I'll ask you again tomorrow. Why is it great compassion? Why not some of the other minds, the mind of affectionate love, where you focus on all sentient beings and you feel close to them, you have affection towards them, you find them endearing, or the mind that is determined to now protect sentient beings, or even bodhicitta itself. Why is it great compassion? Why is it that particular mind? All right, so something to reflect on. I'll check with you tomorrow. You can reflect on it tonight. Anyway, it's almost time to do meditation. I would like to use the time we have to go over everything we've done this morning, and also, well, within this session, to contemplate, meditate on this. And we have a little bit more time before I want to start the meditation. So time again to check with you. Do you have any questions so far? Have you got anything that's come up? Still no question? No? Yes, please. Oh, yes. Sorry, I didn't see your hand. What's your name? Ben. Ben, go ahead.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, so I am a little bit confused about, we said that the two natures, when we say Buddha nature, we speak about the naturally abiding and the other one, sorry, I forgot it was.
The evolving.
The evolving,
The evolving
yeah.
one.
We said that
Yes.
they both were there since beginningless time. And then we say that we awaken the nature. When we say that we awaken, it sounds like it wasn't there before and we awaken it. So can you clarify?
Yes. Well, really, it's a little problematic that there is this one characteristics that the Chittamatra talks about, that they say they've existed since beginningless time. And without talking about awaking, I mean, evolving Buddha nature is really this awakening, right? I mean, like, or without saying awakening, but it's this evolving Buddha nature is when you nourish the seeds, through listening and contemplating and meditating on the Dharma, right? That was the terminology that was used early on. So then once the seeds have become nourished as such, so there's something happening with these seeds, then we talk of evolving Buddha nature. So that definitely hasn't existed there before the nourishment. But they insist on saying, but the continuum. So, like the seed, it was just not called evolving Buddha nature, but it was there in the form of a seed the whole time. So they kind of find this wiggle room, if you like. So instead of saying, yes, it was there as evolving Buddha nature since beginningless time, they say, no, it wasn't called evolving Buddha nature then, but, it was really that seed has always existed. Yeah. So it's a little kind of like, okay, all right, for the sake of debate, okay, let's accept it. But it's a little problematic. Yes. Okay. Good. You noticed. Nice. Good. Very good. All right. Anyone else? Come on. How many people? There are 19 people. It keeps changing. It's 17, it's 18, it's 20. It's what's happening? All right. Anyway, so more questions, please. Anything you haven't understood yet? No. Well, it wasn't that difficult anyway, I suppose. Well, I mean, honestly, I'm a little bit at loss how much I should explain. I mean, how much I should include and what I shouldn't include, because obviously these 80 pages, I can't go through all of them, but to decide what is really relevant and what is not, I have a bit of a hard time doing that. Well, maybe I'll say a little bit about these three types, again, being definite. So again, the scriptures, they also differentiate. Of course, many different people are different. So therefore, there's a distinction between sentient beings who are definite. This is on page 22. I've again jumped a little bit. So at the top of 22, besides the fact that everyone having Buddha nature in the form of naturally abiding or evolving, as we've had, despite that, there's this difference between some having hero nature awakened and solitary realizer nature and Maya nature, as explained. But there is also a further way in which there's a distinction made that there are some sentient beings who are definite with regard to the nature of one of the three vehicles. So this seems to suggest that no matter what the external circumstances are, their own psychological makeup, their own mind, if you like, is such, of course, due to imprints, etc., that also have to do with the external world. But their mind is such that even if one day they listen to Mahayana teachings, they're not interested. They're not interested at all. They're definite with regard to, at some point, definitely awaken the hero nature. So it's saying that even if they haven't awakened hero nature yet, they will definitely do that, because they have this natural, well, kind of liking for these types of teachings. So whatever other teachings they meet, and of course that makes total sense. I mean, maybe in our own case, we've also encountered other teachings, not even of the Buddhist tradition, but of other traditions, and we've been exposed to them and we studied them, etc. And we end up, well, maybe being drawn to the Mahayana tradition, we were definite with regard to at some point awaken our Mahayana nature. So therefore, again, this distinction, those who are definite with regard to following any of the three, no matter what we encounter first, there are those. And then there's sentient beings who are not definite. Well, yeah, obvious. So it may just be whatever we encounter first, that is the teaching we follow. There are also those. And again, of course, in retrospect, you just don't know. What were you? Like, we don't know. If we hadn't met those teachings, would we had followed them or not? I mean, it's very difficult to tell. But in general, we can say there are those who are definite in that no matter what they encounter. Well, in that case, you can definitely tell. So in the case of someone naturally having a tendency for the Mahayana, for instance, so no matter what teachings they encounter, they will definitely follow the Mahayana, as an example. And then there are those, well, whatever comes first, they follow this type of teaching. And then there's the third category, but that's obviously not accepted by everyone. Sentient beings who lack a nature, who have no potential to attain liberation or Buddhahood. And again, of course, we know that is only accepted by some. All right. And of course, it can then be divided into those who are definite with regard to those definite with regard to the hero nature, to the solitary realized nature, and the Bodhisattva or the Mahayana nature. All right, no need to go into that. Okay, so I've pretty much covered all this, covered the different types of beings. That's not hard to understand. Then there were a few debates. Again, I'm thinking to leave that for tomorrow. So, well, therefore, rather than going into all this, let's start now with the Prasangika school. And then I can decide still in the meantime how much I'm going to do. And anyway, I'm looking at time. Okay. All right. Now, with regard to the highest school, now the Madhyamika school. Where does it start? Does anyone know where it starts in the text? I think I've gone too quickly. I looked through it in the break. Remember page number.
31.
Is it 31? Let me see. Yeah, Madhyamika school. Thank you. Very good. That's it. All right. Now, having covered the Vaibhashika, having covered Sautantrika and Chittamatra, well, now it's much easier, of course. So this is also the purpose, of course, going through the other schools. It's easier to understand the Madhyamika school. Now, here there are three sections. First, what is the nature of Buddha nature? So it's a little confusing, that word, nature of Buddha nature. Actually, in Tibetan, the first word nature has much more the meaning of the sense or the entity of Buddha nature. There are different words in Tibetan. In English, it sounds like a repetition. It is a repetition. So describing, sometimes the word here is also said like the word nature, it's more, which is like definition. Although here it's not the definition as such as giving more a general kind of explanation is given here. This is still following Panchen Sontapa's general meaning as we've been following up to this point. So what is the nature? What is it all about, Buddha nature, to give a rough sense of what it's all about? And then what are the categories of Buddha nature and the signs of having awakened Buddha nature? Again, similar to what we went through before, but this time from the Madhyamika school point of view. And then here, well, what is Buddha nature? What does it mean? just to be rough, like a rough, it's a definition that can be debated. A definite definition is given in a slightly different text, but the way we usually study these ideas, we get a general idea in the text called general meaning, generally set forth. And then there's another text, decisive analysis. That's where all the debate is in, and things are more well thoroughly chewed. You chew through them more thoroughly. So here, for us, just a general sense. It's what is it? It's described. So, what is the nature of Buddha nature? What is the rough kind of definition of Buddha nature? Well, according to the general meaning, it's a sentient being's nature, elements, constituent. I mean, some nature that we all share, which is when its state is transformed. When that nature is transformed, it's suitable, or it will become either a nature body, or the Svabhavakaya, or a Rupakaya of a Buddha. Well, previously I tried to avoid talking about these qualities of the Buddha, but really I need to mention it in the sense that, well, here the Buddha nature, or, well, the Buddha nature as in like the evolving Buddha nature, or the naturally abiding Buddha nature, or the evolving Buddha nature. Well, for instance, the naturally abiding Buddha nature, although it refers to emptiness of our mental consciousness, well, even the emptiness of a Buddha's mind, the emptiness of a Buddha's consciousness is called a Svabhavakaya. So since our consciousness becomes the consciousness of a Buddha, our mental consciousness transforms into the mental consciousness of a Buddha. Therefore, also the emptiness of my consciousness right now becomes the emptiness in that sense of the mind of a Buddha. And that is described as Svabhavakaya, or a nature body in a sense of quality, a natural quality that the Buddha has. The emptiness of the Buddha's mind is not a quality the Buddha has developed, but it's just a quality the Buddha naturally has. We also have this quality, the lack of inherent existence. And then the Rupakaya of a Buddha, the form body of a Buddha. So therefore, basically, our Buddha nature, our evolving Buddha nature, then gives rise also to the Rupakaya, the form body of a Buddha. So in that sense, and this is just a rough explanation, a more precise definition is to be given later. So just to get a sense that basically our Buddha nature, or what we call Buddha nature, it eventually becomes a quality of a Buddha. Okay, so having just given that course with this rough explanation, now again, we talk about naturally abiding, evolving Buddha nature, those two types, quoting the Uttara Tantra, Maitreya's text, which is the most extensive text when it comes to Buddha nature. So what does he say? He compares Buddha nature to a treasure, or the fruit of a tree. Buddha nature, so similar to a treasure and the fruit of a tree, Buddha nature should be known as having two aspects: that which abides naturally since beginningless time, and that which becomes supreme through proper cultivation. Okay, so quite different, the sense of naturally abiding. There's this whole debate, which we'll see at a different point, this debate on, well, naturally, why does the Chittamatra school of this talk of naturally abiding? Naturally means something with respect to emptiness. Therefore, the Chittamatra explanation is not correct, in the sense that here abiding naturally refers to the natural state of phenomena. It's existed since beginningless time, because all phenomena have always lacked inherent existence. Our mind has always lacked inherent existence, but although the emptiness doesn't change, the lack of inherent existence of our mind doesn't change, but our mind changes. It becomes more supreme. It becomes better. It enhances through proper cultivation. So here, naturally abiding Buddha nature is compared to a hidden treasure. It's like a hidden treasure. Hidden treasure, and that emptiness is so precious. I mean, when we hear about emptiness, not even the word really appeals to us. Of course, we're using a word in this case, the English language, which has a negative connotation. I mean, who likes to have emptiness? It's like, it actually has not a very good, well, my life is so empty kind of idea, so kind of meaningless and useless. But of course, from a Buddhist point of view, it's this idea of emptiness, or the concept of emptiness is so beautiful. It's so precious. So it's like a precious treasure. The sense that when we find a lot of money, we finally be happy. Well, that's not going to happen, but we find emptiness, we really have a chance to be finally happy. So in that way, it's like a hidden treasure. And evolving Buddha nature is like the fruit of a tree, nurtures us, it helps us to grow and so forth. So the evolving Buddha nature having that potential to lead to growth. And this is, like I said, part of the Maitreya Sublime Continuum. Here it says that most sentient beings are not aware of the ultimate reality of their mental consciousness. As Maitreya explains, this lack of true or inherent existence, that facilitates the change and development of their mental consciousness. And this is one of the reasons why. There's another reason, but why emptiness? I mean, it seems like when we talk about Buddha nature, it should be something, well, tangible. Not really. I mean, we would like it to be more tangible and more concrete, but of course, neither of the two Buddha natures are in any way concrete and tangible. However, at least the mind is something we understand to some degree. Okay, the mental consciousness, okay, that's mental, that's Buddha nature. But the absence of something that has never been there, that is Buddha nature, it's really difficult to grasp. And after everything else we've heard, and the other ideas seem much more comprehensive. I mean, like, well, much more understandable, like the idea of, for instance, the seeds. Yeah, that makes sense. So we need to really kind of get a sense how emptiness, to put our mind around this idea, how emptiness is actually called Buddha nature. We've got our emptiness, it's just there, and it's only the lack of something that's never been there. So it's not like a dynamic phenomenon as our mind is. But as it's explained already here, it is that the fact that our mind lacks inherent existence that facilitates the change and the development of our mental consciousness. So the lack of inherent existence and our mental consciousness, they cannot be separated. They cannot be separated. The fact that our mind doesn't exist inherently appears that way to our mind because of our misapprehension since beginning of this time, although it appears that way, but actually it doesn't exist that way. And because our mind doesn't exist that way, that's why it can change. That's why it can develop. And that is so important to understand, that if phenomena existed the way they appear to us, nothing would be possible. Only if they lack inherent existence, everything becomes possible. But what is more so is that if we understand that, if we realize emptiness, well, lack of inherent existence of our own mind or lack of inherent existence of other phenomena, if we realize that, then our mind will actually be transformed in such a way that we can attain the state of a Buddha. So in that way, it's so important. Naturally abiding Buddha nature is Buddha nature in the sense that having it enables us to become a Buddha, and realizing it is needed then to become a Buddha. So those two are quite important. Okay. I think that should be enough. We've just done an hour, and now there's a little time left for meditation. So allow me to just briefly summarize what we've gone through today. We've discussed, of course, Buddha nature. I started off with talking about the two types from the Prasangika school point of view. Hopefully it helps us in that process to understand the incredible potential we have, that the sky's the limit. There's so much we can do. We can become a Buddha. Well, there's very little else in the samsara that really we cannot accomplish if we apply the right kind of causes and conditions. But more importantly, we can attain liberation, freedom from suffering. But for that, it's very useful to understand Buddha nature better, and to understand it better, it's the other philosophical schools that help us. We've gone through the explanation according to the Vaibhashika and the Satantrika. Certain ideas, of course, we would dismiss, but other ideas may be helpful in terms of, yes, being satisfied with the simple kind of facilities, food and so forth, and having joy in practice, definitely something that can be very conducive for practicing the Dharma, to become liberated and even to lead to enlightenment. Then the potential, of course, our mind has just to be more graspable. We learned about the Chittamatra school. Again, that is helpful. But in the end, we focus on the Madhyamika explanation, the high school's explanation, where, of course, evolving Buddha nature being the mind itself, mental consciousness itself, which turns into the mind of a Buddha, and naturally abiding Buddha nature, referring to emptiness. With emptiness, everything becomes possible. If phenomena lack inherent existence, they can change, we can evolve, we can become a Buddha. And it's through realizing emptiness, our own emptiness, and the emptiness of other phenomena, that we can actually accomplish that. So that should be today enough for like a rough overview. And well, then tomorrow we can go into more details on what we've learned today. But in the meantime, let's do some meditation, some analytical meditation. Am I okay with time? Yeah, we've got half an hour. We've got until now, we have about 23 minutes left. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'm not confused.
But we can steal a few minutes. But we can steal a few.
Still a few. Okay, all right. Okay. So to start the meditation, of course, we need a few moments just to calm down, to settle the mind, to let go of disruptive thoughts. So let's start with some breathing meditation before I guide you through the analysis. So now focus your attention on your mental consciousness. Become aware of the stream of awareness. Mind that is meditating right now. That continuum that is always with us. that is there even when we're asleep. And at the time of death, may grow subtler. It never leaves us. It is that which causes us a lot of problems. Manifesting in the form of fear, anger, attachment, envy, and so forth. Yet it's the only thing we can learn to fully control. But not just that. In terms of its actual nature, our mental consciousness is not different from that of Buddha. Since it's actually clear and knowing. Anything can appear to our mental consciousness. And it has the potential to simply know things. At the same time, we can experience limitless love and limitless compassion. Towards limitless sentient beings. And the fact we're not able to do all this right now. Know whatever there is to know. And experience limitless love and compassion. Limitless sentient beings. Simply due to the obstructions we have in our mind right now. Obstructions that are not in the nature of our mind. Just as the dirt in a river, and the water of a river is not in the nature of that water. It can therefore be removed. Likewise, our ignorance, our hatred, attachment, and all other limitations of our mind are merely temporary. Can be completely eradicated. Therefore, our mental consciousness right now that stream of awareness that has neither beginning nor end. Without its continuum. That is Buddha nature. Our Buddha nature. It's evolving Buddha nature. And that we can use our mental consciousness to evolve and develop itself. through our Dharma practice. So that our mental consciousness transforms into the mind of a Buddha. Yet it can only do so because it lacks inherent, intrinsic, independent existence. It's that lack of inherent existence. Emptiness or selflessness of our mental continuum. That is the natural abiding Buddha nature. For if our mind didn't lack inherent existence, type of existence that is totally unrealistic, nonetheless appears to our mind. So if it didn't lack inherent existence, it could never free itself from the obstructions to liberation and enlightenment. But not only does the natural abiding Buddha nature facilitate the transformation of our evolving Buddha nature, it is also the main object ignorance, emptiness, the main object of the evolving Buddha nature. And it is that which our mental consciousness needs to directly experience in order to free itself from all obstructions. So no matter how difficult our life may seem to be at times, how impossible the obstacles we experience, we're so fortunate to have not just one Buddha nature, but two. Two aspects or qualities and enable us to achieve the highest possible state of wisdom, compassion, and bliss. So let's spend a moment meditating through rejoicing and having this incredible potential in the form of our mind and its ultimate nature. To generate the determination to not allow the temporary sufferings we go through to discourage us. Instead, to continue our practice. Of working towards enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings. In that way, let's conclude our meditation with this joy what we have, and the determination to utilize it in the best way possible. And so now all that's left is to dedicate whatever virtue you've accumulated today. We studied, contemplated, and meditated on Buddha nature. May this become a cause for us to actualize our fullest potential of utilizing two types of Buddha nature. In order to quickly attain the state of a Buddha for the welfare of all sentient beings. And in the meantime, whatever positive potential we've accumulated here together, may this cause the life of our precious lamas, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all the other temporary masters, who are living embodiments of the teachings, may cause them to have a healthy, very, very, very long life. That they may continue to share with us their unique realizations of the Dharma. May all the merit we've accumulated also help all other beings right here and right now. Those who are sick, like Tali Lubin, or Uchama Maton, who's about to have an eye operation. That operation may be successful. And that all other beings who are sick, physically, but also suffer mentally, may their suffering, may their pain be reduced. May they be able to find real peace by virtue of our merit. And if we have Shantideva's prayer ready, we could read that since it's so inspiring. So let's, oh yeah, there it is. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, attain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think benefiting each other. And most importantly, for as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, so how are we with time? Yeah, I went a little bit longer, but I don't think I stretched it too far. Okay, so today we've done relatively little meditation. As I usually like to do, I'd like to give you a bit of the context, but tomorrow I want to do more meditation, go through some of the aspects, also Buddha nature or Arya nature is explained by the Vaibhashika school, the Satantrika school, just to kind of reflect on these aspects to our satisfaction with little, etc., joy in practicing. I'd like to address all this in the meditation and go, of course, more into the text. We won't be able to cover all of it, but hopefully some of the more important parts I'll be able to address and we'll be able to meditate on. So tomorrow we have got more time. Tomorrow I'll start on time, I promise. 9 o'clock in Germany, I'll be ready for that. 10 o'clock where you are. And well, what I would like to request you, the last thing I want to say is try to spend today with the awareness of what you learned today. So bodhicitta, allow for bodhicitta to remain with you, to accompany you throughout the day, but also become aware of this incredible mind that you all carry within you, that is your essence, really, that who makes you who you are. And at the same time, with all its limitations, to be aware that they're only temporary, that they're not in the nature of your mind, and that we all have this incredible potential to become a Buddha, and to not waste it, but rather to continuously move towards transforming our mind, changing, reducing our afflictive emotions, and replace them with more love and compassion for all sentient beings. So to kind of remain in that state, in a kind of semi-retreat state, if you can, to bring back what you've learned today again and again for the rest of the day and for the beginning of tomorrow. And then all that's left is to wish you a nice Friday. And how do you say happy Shabbat? I forget now. Shalom Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Right?
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. All right. And so I see you again tomorrow. All right.
Thank you, Geshe, very much for this day of teaching, and thank you all the participants. We'll see you here tomorrow.
Okay. See you tomorrow. Bye.